Folks, hello and welcome back to the Naren Agarwal Show, where we get entrepreneurs here to teach us how they created rapid key success in whatever they are doing. Today, I have a very special friend and a guest of mine, Mr. Umang Lalani. He's the founder of RentOCart. Sun ke aap curious hain? Let's hear from him. Introducing Mr. Umang Lalani. Umang bhai, how are you doing?
Thank you, Naren. Thank you for calling me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm happy that you're here and we're sitting on this comfy couch to have this conversation on a Sunday afternoon before lunch. Huh?
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Happy to be here.
Umang bhai, I'll talk to you about your story and history, but first off, since we just talked about RentOCart,
Yeah.
what is RentOCart? What is the startup? And what does it do?
Sure. Before I talk about RentOCart, maybe I'd like to talk a bit about myself.
Yeah.
So you can get the history of where we're coming from.
Correct.
So I started my professional journey 15 years ago. I'm an engineer by education. I did work for a French multinational where I was developing softwares. But then I soon realized that that's not my cup of tea. So I decided to dive back into my family business, which was into distribution of IT and electronics. That's been going on for about 45 years. Started with my father.
That's an old family business.
Yeah, it's called Lalani Infotech Limited. I was taking care of the entire distribution across 15 states in India, handling large teams, working with multinationals for their go-to-market strategy and brand building and channel distribution. I did that for about 14 years. But after a point in time, I realized that I was not adding enough value to myself in the entire buying and selling process.
Correct.
So as of last year, in October 21, I decided to get out of my family business and try and venture out something new. So after having spent almost 15 years in a safe, comfortable environment, I decided to move out because I did see certain opportunities and I wanted to explore it before it's too late. So in January 2022, I started this company which owns RentOCart because I did see that there was a huge gap in that space. So RentOCart is essentially a platform where people can rent out consumer electronics, including all kinds of gadgets and electronic devices. Now, on the surface of it, it sounds like a normal business, normal renting business. There's a history and there's a reason behind it. So you see, India is an aspirational country, right? We are all growing middle class. We have lots of youngsters. We have a huge youth population which is working hard and want to grow and want to have the best things in life. And they're an aspirational lot, right? So they need new devices, new electronic devices every now and then.
Every year we want to change a phone. Yes, 6 months we want to change a phone. You don't want to get the latest laptop that's coming.
Absolutely. There's one lot of that. There are people who are starting up businesses. There are people who are moving houses and don't want to buy devices every now and then.
Yeah, IT professionals, moving houses from here to there, switching jobs constantly, moving from B towns to A towns.
So the RentOCart was started with a mission that we can help out the working professional class as well as the businesses to cater to these requirements, the short-term and long-term needs. But the bigger and the greater picture is that when you talk about e-waste in India, right? Still about India is the third largest e-waste manufacturer in the world, producer rather, after US and China. About 95% of the e-waste in India is handled illegally, and this is disposed in rudimentary ways. It's a big problem in India, right? And we need to figure out a way to counter it. So there are organizations which are concerned about the soil. There are organizations which are planting trees, right? So this was one of my way to contribute to the world. To give you some data, for example, if one new laptop is manufactured, it produces 333 kilograms of carbon dioxide. That's almost equivalent to 15 trees. That is how much they consume in a year's time, right? So every time one less electronic device is bought, there's a signal that goes to the value chain, hey, manufacture one less. So our idea was to create a platform where people can share what they have to spare, right? I'm sure everyone in their house has devices which are lying spare. So that's the idea, but how to do it in a country which is trust deficit, right? When you go to America or the Europe, people start from a position of trust until you do something that leads them to mistrust you.
Yeah, very interesting. And in India, people they mistrust you first, and you got to build that trust.
Build that trust.
You know, it's the other journey as compared to the West.
So that's what we're trying to do at RentOCart. Create a community where we can have both givers and takers who believe in each other, that nothing's going to happen to the device. And obviously they make money, that's a byproduct, but we're solving a bigger problem, that we are trying to push up the efficiency of these devices which are lying idle, right? And at the same time save the environment. So that's the bigger picture.
Well, this is awesome. You know, I took an environmental economics class in my college in America, and the professor said one thing that's really stuck to my head. He said, you know, to create environmental impact, you got to tie in economics with it, because essentially we are run by economics in the modern world, in market economy.
Absolutely.
So these environmentalists, when I see, you know, in general, who are just raising a jhanda and walking every day, just creating a noise, they're doing a good job in shouting out the problem, but there's no solution there. You know, it's just complaining, constant complaining.
Right.
But entrepreneurs like you come into the picture, they see a problem and they see what's the way to solve it. Acha, ek economic problem hai, there's an at the same time environmental problem.
Yes.
And how can we merge this
Absolutely.
to get to a solution where you cater to both parties?
Absolutely. We need to create value for both the parties.
That's so important.
Absolutely.
And that's amazing that you were able to put two and two together to create a solution like this. So now RentOCart, it's a website and a marketplace essentially, right?
It's a website where you can lease out equipments. And why would someone come to RentOCart to lease out their equipments? So over a period of time, since in the last 1 year, we've developed mechanisms where we are able to filter out the right kind of customers to be onboarded, so that none of the people who are trying to rent out their gadgets on our platform are defrauded or lose their products. So every time a person rents out a product from our platform, we create a score against his name, which he can't see it right now. But when the time is right, when we've acquired enough customers, that score will be publicly viewable. So for example, if Naren tomorrow after 2 years he wants to rent out a gadget, he goes to a platform like mine, lists the product out, and suppose 3 people show interest, and Naren can just see what is the trust score against that person who's trying to get your device on rent. So the idea is to create a community, right? So as I told you before, what's sad is that, you know, in India, because it's a trust deficit country, we don't have any insurance companies which are covering devices which are rented out, right? So we need to have the right amount of users on our platform to get those insurances also in place for tomorrow.
Because essentially insurance companies are run by data. So unless they see the data, they might not be comfortable enough to go ahead and issue a policy, right?
It's a nascent idea. So obviously we need to onboard more customers on our platform to eventually ask them to underwrite the data.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you started when? Back in?
I started on 6th of January 2022.
6th of January 2022. So it's just been about a year.
Just been about a year.
Wow. And how many people do we have using the platform?
So up till date, we went slow on it because we wanted to be sure that we are onboarding the right customers. We have serviced more than 5,000 customers. This is only across cities of Calcutta and Jaipur. We've recently done a pilot in Delhi and Hyderabad. We'll be expanding there as well. So our key focus area was that how can we come up with a metrics in which we have no defaults. And I'm happy to share that out of 5,000 odd rental instances that we've done, we've had only 1 default.
Wow.
So I have a reason to believe that we might have cracked the right kind of formula to go after the right customers, right? And because not everything in India can be run by CIBIL scores.
Correct.
Because it's a fraction of the entire population. Most of the people have never seen loans. So we don't factor into accounts the traditional financial CIBIL scores, etc. We have our own mechanism.
Correct.
It's automated on our platform, and we're only improving each day.
Wow. So this is really powerful. Like you're really focusing on building a strong foundation. जहाँ पे customer safety अगर रहेगा तो supplier and people who are putting the products out, they will be feeling very secure
100%.
to put their products out.
100%.
So that's how you're building the trust deficit that exists in the market. On your platform, you're trying to cover up for that.
Because there are a lot of smaller companies which are into this business, but they do it very arbitrarily. They don't have right mechanisms or modes by which they can go and check all of that. They typically operate in the radiuses of 2 or 3 or 5 kilometers where they feel comfortable. So we're trying to get this unorganized segment into an organized one. And eventually we want people to take up using recycled, refurbished products, maybe for renting or maybe for buying. But we want people to spend less on the new electronics, because anyway they will be wanting to replace it the next year or after that.
Yeah. I think this is very interesting what you say, that people want to take up refurbished products, because now if you search on Amazon, Flipkart, all these websites, more refurbished items are coming on the search.
Of
So
course.
the idea of buying refurbished or used products is getting more general acceptance. I see across many sectors in India. Pehle there was a thought, we only buy first hand, but now even with cars, even with electronic gadgets, people are getting more and more comfortable using used products.
I agree with you.
And why do you think the market is shifting like that?
See the way I look at things, our parents, when I say our parents, fought for roti kapda makan.
Correct.
Right? The basics. We fought most of our life for standard of living. Right? The new generation which comes in.
That's me.
I'm sorry. So anyway, I'll give you that. The new generation that has come in, they are looking at quality of life, because they already have the other two covered.
Correct.
So when they're wanting quality of life, when they want instant gratification, when they want the best, they're ready to pay for an experience rather than owning the entire thing. So they would rather pay little for the experience of a better quality for a short period, rather than buy an inferior product and keep it to themselves. So the way I look at things, that's why the new generation, they are okay to travel in an Uber, they're okay to rent a house, they're okay to go with the flow. They want fluidity, they want to be able to shift, they don't want to commit, right? So they want that kind of flexibility. So I think that's one of the reasons why people are okay now. There's no longer a taboo that I stay in a rented house and I don't own a house, that I bought a refurbished and I didn't buy a new one, or I've rented a product, right? Before, imagine that, one landlord is sitting into a car, and the same car your guard is going. It happens in Uber today, no? Who cares? The environment has changed. People's thinking has changed. So I think we have to embrace it.
Yeah.
We have to let go of the old ways.
And people are getting comfortable with renting furniture, renting homes.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a positive movement, because, see, this is how I think. Let's say you have a company which has 1,000 team members, and now you have to have laptops for almost every team member. Now, if that company buys 1,000 laptops, they also in some part get into the laptop maintenance business.
Of course.
Right? Uska kaam, let's say, paper manufacturing hai. But now because they have 1,000 laptops, they get into the laptop maintenance business, because 1,000 laptops need to be maintained. But let's say if they can rent it out, then they free themselves from that activity and that headache.
Absolutely.
And I think that's target of market economy as well, where everybody does what they are good
best at.
They are best at.
Absolutely.
So why should I worry about managing laptops when somebody like you who can come and do that for us?
And most of the people do it with us. It's not just because of the hassle that they have to avoid. Obviously, they save on the cost that they have to pay every year on year.
Yeah.
Then, we're living in dynamic times where team sizes increases and decreases like this. So they don't have to have working capital block. If they have to let go of some people, the assets can be returned back. Stop the subscription. Tomorrow, you out of all the people, how ChatGPT is progressing, how the softwares are evolving every day. Imagine what you buy today is good for today's softwares. But after 6 months, it's not for the new softwares. What are you going to buy? Another product? You rather rent a new product which has better specs.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. Instant gratification is needed. You think it's working slow? You don't have to figure about, oh man, I have to get it upgraded. I have to send it to a technician. No, just unsubscribe. Get something better.
Yeah. And in a country like India, where there is such a different strata and spectra of people, so those laptops that maybe you don't need in your high-end company can be used by another company, or can be used by another individual who just came and needs some basic laptop training or computer training.
That's the exact idea.
Yeah.
So what is not useful for you is definitely very useful for a lot of other people. But you have to decide whether it's going to spend time on your shelf, or rather you put it to a better use and even help the environment, right? So that's the goal. That's the goal.
So brother, this is awesome. Like I'm loving this conversation and insight about electronic and appliance renting and how it's evolving in India. Now I want to get to another angle of the conversation. You said you're trying to build a community.
Of course.
Knowing you, I also know that you own a chapter of BNI. So what is BNI? A lot of people might be aware what is BNI, and you own a chapter of that in Bhubaneswar, a city that's quite budding in India. So that's essentially also community building. What's your experience with that, building a community of entrepreneurs, and what would you like to share about it?
So from my formative years, I really love helping people, and people who know me enough, they also tell that if I'm a friend, I'm a friend forever. So I really love building communities, as I told you earlier. And so BNI is basically an American company, about 37 years old, which creates groups which they call chapters of business owners, SMEs or MSMEs, who essentially help each other's businesses grow, right? So in a group, there are different people with different work experiences and categories, and only one person is allowed from each category. So there is no internal competition, and all entrepreneurs work together, helping each other generate referrals and businesses. So I actually own the BNI franchise for Odisha, or rather Bhubaneswar, and me and one of my cousins, we have put together about 300 entrepreneurs together.
Wow. And so you own that chapter?
It's not chapter, we own the region. So for example,
region, okay. It's like a distribution.
It is like a franchise, but obviously it's not something which you can buy.
Correct.
There are a lot of tests that you have to go through, and the authorities have to feel that you can do justice to this role, and people will listen to you, because you're not working with employees. You're working with good, solid business owners who made it on their own.
Correct.
Right? To managing them and to make sure that they're always inspired and motivated to run these groups and help each other. So that's what we do there.
Wow.
And, it has been a very, very fulfilling experience, and given me a lot of exposure to different regions, different industries, right? And as a part of being, as I'm a part of that group, so I'm also exposed to a lot of other regions in India and what they are doing in each of their zones. So essentially, I realized, the common basics are same across our country, and one true value that I believe in of BNI is givers gain. So if you keep giving, eventually we will gain, and we will not even know about it. So,
wow.
So that's the core value that I believe in, and I really, really think that we need to keep giving to get back what we must.
Brother, what did it take? So like when you initially, let's say, started BNI in Bhubaneswar, how many people were there in the beginning?
So when I started BNI Bhubaneswar, and that was a time about 4 years ago, when there was a lot of chit fund scams going on in India, right? So when I actually started going from Calcutta to Bhubaneswar and started approaching prospective members who were running successful businesses, hey, why don't you become a part of this community? We help you generate business. They actually thought I'm there to sell soap or toothpaste. Right? So there was a lot of mistrust. There was a lot of skepticism. Over a period of time, it took us some time, but once we reached a tipping point, then there was no question of trust.
So like you literally had to build from scratch. There were zero members.
There were zero members.
And in 4 years, you built a membership of 300 people.
Rather more, because as a practice, about 20% people leave every year.
Correct.
Because they don't, because the expectations of different people are different.
Correct.
And the core values, if you can't give, you'll never gain.
Correct.
Yeah. So yes, out of from scratch we started, and we have that large community now. And the way we are going, I think by next year we'll have about 500 people.
500 people in 5 years.
Yeah.
And some of you might be thinking, oh, 500 is not bad. In Facebook, I can start a community and build a community of 500 members. But these are 500 entrepreneurs who are helping each other and paying money every year to be subscribed to the chapter, right? Yes, so it's not just like, oh, I like and become part of the community. They have to attend meetings every week. It's a very dedicated community.
At the meeting, there are rules, there are policies that if you don't come for 3 meetings in 6 months, you're out. So it's as good as that. So there are dedicated people who understand that they need to commit to growth. It will not happen overnight, or it will not happen sitting in your own office and comfort zone.
So what's like a big learning, would you say, that you got? What's needed to build communities? Because I think a lot of business owners, we are essentially going towards that, where we have to start building communities, right? To make something successful. Aj OnePlus, that's how they did become so successful. MI in India, they became so successful by focusing on community building. So what's one tip that you would like to share in effective community building?
So if I were to, although there'll be a lot of tips, but if I had to share one tip, can I elucidate with a story?
Yeah, please. That's the best way to learn.
So I'll not get into specific names
Yeah.
or which year or what. So once one of the author, he's written a book, I think Simon Sinek. So he was interviewing one of the retired or active military person, who actually jumped into a building where there was a fire and where his colleagues were inside trapped. Without thinking twice, he jumped in to save. He could have been burnt and he could have died. And post that session, when Simon asked him, that if I were to ask you, why did you do it? Right? Why did you do it? Why did you jump in? There are so many other people. Why did you jump in? You know what did he say? He just said that, I believe that if I was inside there, my colleagues would have done the same for me. Right? So it's trust that takes time. Trust is not something which I can build overnight. I can't tell you, Naren, I trust you and you'll believe me. You need to really care and really be there and build that trust. So if we can build trust, we can collaborate and do wonders. So I think trust building is something which is very, very essential and is at the core of everything. Right? So,
Wow.
So community can be built if there's trust in between.
And like, how did you go about building that trust? What do you say?
It takes time. It takes time. So there are various things that you need to do. As I rightly said, you need to really care. It's like I walk into a room and I tell you, hi Naren, how are you doing? How was your last night? And you're saying, it was good. I was at this cafe, I was drinking this, and then I move on to the next person. Hey, how are you doing? Do I really care? I didn't. Trust is small things, right? You don't cut corners when nobody's seeing, right? Because eventually somebody will know. So there are a lot of things, it's listening actively, being present, not cutting corners when no one is seeing, having your integrity right. Trust takes time, but it has to be a consistent process.
Wow.
But I'll do a lot of things on that.
Amazing, Umang bhai. Now I want to shift gears to another theme in our conversation. So you were in a family business for a long time.
Yes.
Very well set,
Yeah.
handling so many team members, so many things. And then taking that jump into something totally new.
Yes.
Maybe when you're married and you have kids, that takes a lot of courage.
Yes,
right?
it does.
Because when you're settled and everything is set, then to try and move away from that and build something new is a very tough call, professionally to take. What are some things that you told yourself during the journey, and how did you leave what's comfortable to go do what's uncomfortable?
So I will not say I left what is comfortable to do what is uncomfortable, but I will definitely say that I left something which was comfortable to fish out in the waters and figure out if I would rather enjoy doing it and would I be able to create value. Because I did realize that maybe another 5-7 years, I have got 2 kids, I'll not be in that situation to take the jump. And maybe then, if I think about doing something new, I'll settle for whatever I have. So I told myself, maybe this was the right time. If I didn't do it now, I would later regret it. And there's a famous saying, the price of taking a risk that we consider today is much lesser than the bill we get from regret if you don't do it.
So wow. Let's repeat that. Okay. Let's repeat that one more time. The price
we think we'll have to pay to take a risk today is going to be much less than the bill we will get from regret tomorrow.
Wow.
Right. So I did a lot of thinking. It did take me about 4 or 5 years to finally decide. And I took a jump because I was definitely not enjoying what I was doing. And I definitely think I was not creating enough value trading, buying and selling. And I wanted to move out from that and create something which had a more impact over a longer period of time and which I would enjoy doing. So I will not say I'm doing things which are uncomfortable, but yes, when I started, I did think, will this work? Will this not work? But that's a part and that's the journey of growing up.
Correct.
Unfortunately, things have been fine and I'm sure we will grow leaps and bounds.
Wow, amazing. It sounds simple, but it's very tough, I can imagine.
It was tough.
To take that
It was extremely tough because you're filled with self-doubt. You're filled with lots of ghosts and skeletons from the past. Because everybody makes mistakes. I've done huge mistakes and blunders in my past businesses, but the idea to not learn from them would be a bigger mistake. So yeah, there's a lot of self-doubt when I started that.
I think a lot of people, a lot of us in entrepreneurship, this is what we do. We reach somewhere, we become very comfortable, and then we don't we miss that knack to go and challenge ourselves again. But बहुत ज़्यादा देर एक comfort zone में रहने से ही, that's the start of the downfall.
You become numb.
Yeah. And sometimes you gotta, the other day I was speaking to somebody, said sometimes you gotta kill what you made.
Yes.
To move on to do something bigger and something that you think will add more value in the world. That's a very tough thing to do, and congratulations on you taking that call.
Thank you, Naren.
To starting something totally new again.
But nothing is possible without people backing you, especially your family and the closest of friends. So obviously, I also believe that nobody is self-made. Self-made is a myth, right? We need to undo that myth. There are a lot of people behind us, knowingly or unknowingly. I'm sure you believe the same.
Yeah, 100%. There's this book, Tools of Titans, by Tim Ferriss, and it's like a buffet book, and he gets the best of all industries, health, ye wo. And in the beginning, I think it's a foreword by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he says, "I am not a self-made man. To do this person helped me. To do this person helped me.
Absolutely,
to do this person helped me." So there is nothing called a self-made man. And that's the time when I realized that yes, there is nobody called a self-made man.
There isn't. Yes.
Wonderful. So Umang bhai, I'm coming back to your current business now.
Yeah.
RentOCart,
yes.
Appliances, marketplace where you can rent your appliances. Now we're talking about laptops. That's simple. But renting, let's say, a washing machine or an air conditioning, I can imagine so many complexities coming up.
Sure.
Because someone has a, let's say, washing machine, and someone else is renting it out. You are in the middle. People will hold you accountable,
of course,
and ask you questions.
Yes.
So how do you ensure the nitty-gritties of things? कि washing machine सही है, इसको rent कर रहा है सही है, कोई problems आएंगे, problem resolution कैसे हो रहा है? What are some tools, strategies, systems that you're using? Like, let's talk specifics, and because I want to learn from you.
Of course. So when there are phases in which things start on the platform. So currently is the phase where we are using professional companies who are into renting, right? And we are renting our own assets as well, right? That's the first phase where we create enough name for the brand that we onboard enough end customers as our customers, right? So that tomorrow the business is sustainable. In second phase, we go all out and only recruit sellers and reduce our own asset input to the organization, right? So we have enough sellers, we have enough assets, because in a renting business, your limitation is the number of assets you can own. So when we do away with the limitation and we are playing a game where the assets are distributed, there is sky is the limit, right? To ensure that the standard of quality or service is maintained, right? We have a clear-cut SOP defined where there are specific conditions which a seller must meet in order to be onboarded on a platform. It's not like anybody can go and onboard, right? After that phase is well covered, that is when we open up the C2C lending platform where customer can also go ahead and rent out something directly, right? So there are phases to it. The first phase is renting yourself along with some sellers. Second phase is sellers only. Third phase is we also open up to customers. So consumer renting will have several models where they would be able to give the devices to us, where we can do the fulfillment for them, or a dropship model where it can be fulfilled via them, right? The entire delivery procedure would be handled by us, right? There's an SOP for services. So it's a little more complicated right now, and I don't think that we'd be able to break down upon that, but there are phases to it.
Wow.
And it has to be a journey, right? Unless and until we go through each of these phases, we can't really come out at the other end.
That's amazing. It sounds like, you've created a nice vision and a roadmap of how things will happen, and it seems quite clear, and there's a lot of clarity with that.
Yes, I do have a plan over the next 3 years what has to be executed where. So
Wow.
yeah, and it's a nascent environment, a nascent market, right? So it is something which is really small in terms of awareness, and even we don't have too many large national players doing this. But if you look at the market, it's estimated at about 4,000 crores annually, just the electronic renting market, and the rate at which the white goods industry is growing, this market would be anywhere between 10,000 to 12,000 crores in a year, right? Compare it against how much merchandise Amazon sells in India over the entire year across all categories, 22,000 crore. So Amazon across all category in India sells merchandise almost at about 20,000 crore today. And I'm saying this renting industry of electronics is as big as 10,000 crores annually by the year 2025. So this industry is going to grow. If you look at the phenomena across the world, it's called rent tech, right? If you go to Germany, you have Grover, who also started in the US. Valuation is 1 billion and above. If you go to Europe, there's something called Back Channel. I think it's valued at about 3.5 billion and above. In fact, if you just go and check out what's happening in this industry of renting of electronic devices and selling of the refurbished products, it's booming. It's growing very, very fast because e-waste is a global phenomenon. And I told you some time ago that India e-waste is growing by 30% every year, right? And it's only going to go faster. So it's a global phenomenon. I mean, everybody has to come into this. In some of the European countries, people buy refurbished devices that have cost higher than new devices. Would you beat that? Because they are environmentally conscious.
Oh my God.
So there people are doing it because they're environmentally conscious. In India, people will start because it's going to be cost effective. But our purpose is same. We want to do something for the world. Eventually, I believe you'll also get there, right? So that's the reason and vision.
Wow. That's amazing. Tomorrow, let's say those American companies, if they decide to enter India, they can come in and pose a big competition or a threat, right? But like, where do you think your USP stands?
Sure. So I get that a lot. Why can't someone else do it? So when I was moving out of my family business, I did think that I want to do something which an Amazon or a Flipkart or a Reliance or a Tata can't do tomorrow, right? For example, renting of devices is not a novel concept, right? So it is growing, and I'm sure these large companies also recognize that. That's the exact reason why OEMs like HP, Dell, Lenovo have got into renting directly, right? They're renting their own devices as service to larger corporates. But hey, everybody's missing out the consumers because it's a messy affair. Renting to consumer in India is a difficult job. It's a very, very difficult task. Right? So unless you have the right matrices with you, unless you really work hard, because you don't see the quick buck every day. It's going to take time. So getting every consumer is extremely difficult for us, but we are getting there. So I don't see many companies getting into that. Furniture renting is big in India because ticket sizes are smaller. Risk is smaller. They believe koi sofa leke bhag nahi jayega, right? Right. So risk is lower. Plus, if the product gets damaged, repair costs are very low, right? Plus, the furniture renting companies are also in the process of buying refurbished furnitures, make old furnitures, refurbishing them and then renting it out. So although there are some companies which are big on furniture renting, when I look at electronics renting businesses, there are none. So either people are operating as individual business owners who are renting their devices, but nobody's thinking about a marketplace because it's a far more complex problem.
So true. I mean, when I think of this, I am like, wow, how are you doing this? Renting consumers to a large scale.
So I was also scared when I started. So I was extremely scared. But over a period of time, I believe I have more faith in the Indian consumer today as compared to the corporates, because we get a lot of nuisance from corporates, but not from consumers.
Wow.
It's all in the science of filtering out the right customers.
Wow. That's really powerful way to look at it. It's awesome to hear that you're willing to do that work and essentially that's how you create a moat or a USP in doing that tough work, which is boring for maybe other people, but which is needed, and it can lead to a solution. So it is a lot of tough work.
It's a lot of tough work devising one unit to one person, but I think that's the place where we can add value. And someday, when we have the decent trust scores for every customer, people will look at credit scores for financial capabilities and look at our scores for looking at people's intentions.
Wow. Another question I have about this is, are you thinking of like bootstrapping this, or you're like eventually you're looking at getting, venture capitalists and funding so that you can go faster at this?
So up till now, I've been bootstrapped, but yes, we will be needing more money to go out faster and reach out to more customers. Because currently, until you're bootstrapped, every money that you spend, you evaluate that at current ROI. Spent, what's the return?
Yeah.
You sometimes are in a situation where you don't want to divide those costs over the next 5 years. So definitely, yeah, we will be raising funds this year. But up till now, we've been bootstrapped.
Nice. I think that's a really solid approach. And so sometimes you got to raise the fund at the right time when your company is matured and you have the base so solidly set. Now is a good time, and you've done that hard work.
For me, day one, it was very clear the company has to be profitable, and we are a profitable company and good enough. So make a solid base, and so that you can definitely add value both to investors and your customers.
Wow. And I think somewhere, coming from that Marwari family business background, we have a certain programming, right? That you have to be profitable, right?
Absolutely.
You cannot just burn money.
Absolutely.
Whoever's it is.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
We are just not those people.
Amazing, Umang. Anything that you want to say finally, or any questions that you have for me?
For you? Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? So, that's a really nice question. I think, Umang, since I was growing up, I always enjoyed getting the latest piece of knowledge, information, something that really benefited me to my friend circle or friend group. Like I was that guy who did this new course, or learned this new thing, came to the friend group in the evening when everybody was hanging out and shared it. Hey, look, I found this out. This can help you. This can help you. And if somebody used it and they benefited, I used to get so much joy just from sharing that. And I think somewhere bachpan se that's been just brewing. So when I saw that there's an avenue where I can put out that to not just my friend group but to the whole world, I was like, why not? It was more than why, it was why not. So that's what I started doing. I started making content. People sometimes some of my friends also, they made fun. Hey, you're putting up so much content, you're not getting likes, you're not getting subscribers. But we've been posting since last 3 years, 3.5 years, because there's so much joy around it. So that's why
So even that one call makes it all worth it.
Huge difference.
It makes it all worth it.
Worth it.
Right? Someone calls you up and says, man, I saw your video and I got inspired to do this, and that's it. You killed it. Amazing. Yeah. That's the approach we need to have. Not look for instant results. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Umang bhai, what a pleasure to have you on the show, chat with you, and learn so much about your industry. I really learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Hello and welcome again. I hope you really enjoyed this podcast. If you did, share it with one person that you can help. Jisko isse madad mile. And if you like this podcast, you want such more insightful information and knowledge, check out the other podcasts right here. I will see you very soon in another episode.